All right, our lesson tonight is 5.2, using intercepts. We're going to use this as a shortcut for how to graph things in standard form. So a few things that I want you to remember from yesterday. Standard form is in the format ax plus by equals c. And yesterday we said where all those were integers. Remember, these should all be our counting numbers, positives and negatives. Okay, the whole reason we're doing intercepts, like I said just a second ago, is that this is a shortcut for how to graph something in this format. So you don't have to resolve the equation, or like yesterday we talked about, you would have to make a table and plug in, and you would have to solve like 4 different times in a row. Well, today is kind of a shortcut to that, and we just want to show you what that looks like. So first of all, I want you to take a second, and I just want you to, on your paper, remember my axis right here. So if you're looking at my graph, my axis this way is called my x-axis. The vertical axis, so the one going up and down right here, that is called my y-axis. And what I want you to do is pause, draw this graph, and plot those points, and I want you to name all of those points, and I'm going to do the same. And here are my points, and what I want us to do is to think about maybe what the patterns are. So hopefully you named those correctly in the right order. If we look at our points on the x-axis, notice that they all have a number in the x spot, and in the y spot they're all 0. So the first note that we want to take, after, you should have written standard form already, so the next little bullet point we want to write is that our x-intercept, and x-intercept is where a line crosses the x-axis, and we want to make a note that they are written in the format of x, 0. So what I mean by that is, in the x spot, there's always a number, and in the y spot, they're always 0. That's because they're on the x-axis. They're not going up or down at all. All right? Similarly, if we look at our y-intercepts, so if you're coming over here looking at your y-intercepts, I want you to note, so my y-intercept, it's the same idea. A y-intercept is where a line crosses the y-axis. And it is written in the format, so notice what's different about those. It is written in the format 0, y, because on the x, it's not going any direction, right? All of these points, these 3 points on the y-axis are all on the y-axis, so it's 0, y. Now that's really easy to tell on a graph like what we have here. So the first thing we need to do is practice how to do that from an equation or even from a table. So from an equation, remember my x-intercept is written in the format x, 0. That means that y equals 0. So the first thing I want to do is take this equation and pretend like y is 0. So I'm going to say y equals 0. That would mean my equation is going to look like negative 8x plus 7 times 0 equals 28. If we work this out, anything times 0 is 0, so that means negative 8x equals 28. And if you divide, and I'll let you use a calculator here, we should get x equals negative 3.5. That means my x-intercept, so think about my two values, y was 0, x is negative 3.5, so my x-intercept is going to be negative 3.5, 0. I'm going to do the same thing to try to find my y-intercept. So remember, y-intercepts are, the x is 0, so I'm going to plug 0 in for x now. So that's 7y. I'm going back to my original equation, that's why I've written y in this time. So 0 plus 7y equals 28. 7y equals 28, which means if we divide, y is going to equal 4. So when I write, if I take those two pieces of information and I write my ordered pair, it's going to be 0, 4, and because the information's in the y spot, this is my y-intercept. Tomorrow I'm going to show you a slightly shorter way, but I am going to make sure that you understand how to do that method first. On my table over here, it's really easy. They're actually already written for me. So you should understand intercepts are anywhere that you have zeros. So these are my two intercepts. And now I just have to think about which one's which. Well, 0, 3 has information in the y spot. So this is my y-intercept. And 5, 0 has information in my x spot. So this is the x-intercept. All right, now let's see what we can do with that as far as graphing is concerned. Why is this going to be a shortcut for us when we want to graph equations? All right, so we're going to use this as a shortcut for graphing so that we don't have to make a table anymore, but we can just find the intercepts and use those. So one thing I want you to notice, this is really close, but it is not in standard form. Standard form, remember, my x and my y need to be on the same side of the equation. So that means I need to move this y piece to the other side. And if I write those in order, that's going to give me 3x. Now it's going to be minus 2y because I move it across the equal sign, equals 12. Okay, that's just a preliminary step. Now the directions tell me I want to use intercepts. That means I need to use this to find my x-intercept and to find my y-intercept. So to find my x-intercept from the previous example, I'm going to make y equals 0. So that means I'm going to do 3x minus 2 times 0 equals 12. 3x minus 0 equals 12, so 3x equals 12, which means x is going to equal 4 when I solve. You may notice that this step is kind of, you may not have to write like the 0 part here. We'll talk about that shortcut tomorrow. So overall, we want to say that this ordered pair is 4, 0, right? I'm pulling my x value from down here at the bottom, and then I'm pulling my y value with 0 at the top. Now I want to do my y-intercept, and remember I do x is 0 this time, so 3 times 0 minus 2y equals 12. 0 minus 2y equals 12. Make sure that you carry this down as a negative 2y, and then divide by negative 2. Remember, positive divided by negative is a negative, so I'm going to have y equals negative 6. Which means my ordered pair is going to be 0, negative 6. Now this is where this becomes really quick. These two are 2 points on my line, these two intercepts. So if I go to plot those, so take a second to draw yourself a little graph. If I go to plot those, I'm going to have 4, 0, and 0, negative 6. Those are 2 points on my line. So this is really easy. All we have to do is connect those and put arrows in the end, and that makes my line. That is the quickest way to graph this equation that they gave us originally. All right. The last problem that we're going to do is a word problem. Now, so that you don't have to write so much in your notes, I want you to take a second to read through, and we're just going to write some important points. I'm going to underline what you should have written in your notes. So you probably want to label that this is interpreting things that are important. It is the beginning point is 750 meters above the ground. It descends at a constant rate of 25 meters per minute. And then they give me this equation. What this question, the directions aren't on here, but what they're wanting us to do is to find the x and y intercepts, so the x and y intercepts, and to figure out what they represent. So we're going to find them, and I guess maybe explain is a good way to say that, or interpret. So this f of x, remember f of x is kind of like the same thing as saying y. So I'm going to rewrite my equation real quick and interpret that to be y equals 750 minus 20. x. Now, I want to fix this. Remember, this is not in standard form because the x and y are not together, so I want to move this to the other side, which means my equation now is going to read 25x. It became positive because it moved across the equal sign, plus y equals 750. All right, so take a second to practice doing your intercepts, and let's see if you get the right answer. All right, hopefully you got these same two answers that I did at the bottom. We're going to use them to graph. So I'm going to pause and take a minute to get my equation graphed. And I was lazy. I just went ahead and marked 30 and 750 instead of counting all the way up. You'll be given a graph when you do this, so you can be lazy in your notes also. All right, so my graph is going to look like this. I'm just going to connect those two. You could put arrows on the either end if you needed to, but now what we want to do is interpret what this means. So it tells us in our word problem, if we go back and read, it says that x is the number of minutes. So at the bottom here, this is minutes. And then y, or my f of x, is going to represent the height. So this is height. So we want to interpret what these 2 points mean, and there's a few different ways to do that. One thing you can do is just kind of like think about it physically as to what's happening. And this point right here is the height when it starts. Think about we're at minute 0 right here. So we could say that the y-intercept means that the balloon starts at 750 meters. I'm getting that from my problem. Off the ground. And then we can say that it ends, so at 30 minutes, you can see that the height is now 0. So my x-intercept down here, my x-intercept is that it lands at 30 or after 30 minutes. You may also be able to figure out those things from just from the problem without having to graph, but we'll talk about that more tomorrow. To finish up, here are essential questions. Make sure that you can answer these 3 questions before you come to class tomorrow. If you can't answer these questions, either rewatch the video or come into tutoring so that we can answer them before we get started.